What is happening, everybody? MG here, MG Covers, bringing you a brand new sports handicapping video. Title of this video, Major League Baseball sports betting preview for May the 22nd, 2024. Have a ton of content to cover. We're going to review some changes I've made with the model and show you my approach. Now we're going to review the tracker since we've made those changes. Also preview all of today's games. I'm going to give you all my plays for today. Before we do that, as always, if you're watching this video for the first time, greatly appreciate you subscribing to the channel. Have a ton of content related to sports betting on my YouTube channel. So if you subscribe, you'll get a lot of value. Also, I put out an enormous amount of content on Instagram. The screen name is MGCovers, covers spelled with a Z. There's a link to follow me on in this video. If you just look in the description and follow me there, you get a ton of nuggets. We had a special situation with Chicago White Sox winning. I actually played them last night. We'll talk about that game as well. So you get a ton of value simply by following me on Instagram without coming out of pocket any kind of money. All right, so let's dive into kind of what's going on with Major League Baseball. As you know, we had a ton of success last year. The model that we used was basically playing good teams that were, quote, dogs. It ended up the best model I've ever created in my sports betting career was up 42 units. This year, before I abandoned it, it was basically at even. So what's one important thing to note about if you build models, or that's basically you're going to be a handicapper that does a bottom-up approach, building models, relying on the model, is that every season has the potential to be different. Sometimes the model that you used previously will work again and again, consecutive seasons. Sometimes it will not. So you have to be open to potentially changing, and you can't be scared to make those changes and make adjustments. And that's what we're going to show here. So I went to that. I started with that. It was basically even. Then I went to playing top 10 teams via the model, which is what I call the alto concept, meaning if you're building a model, if the model is good, the teams that are higher up in your model should win at a higher frequency than teams down below. And I found that to basically break even. And then about, I think it was last Sunday, I had a former stat model client. If you're interested in building stat models with me, I have a coaching program. We dive into that and work on that daily. It's expensive, but well worth it. So one of my former stat model clients sent me an email and said, hey, I'm actually using the bottom 7 approach, meaning he's playing against the teams that were at the bottom of the model and having a ton of success. And he had back tested it, and it was up like 25 units in like a little over a month. So then I went back to basically an original model. I've made 3 model changes, and this past week we had a ton of success with that. So in essence, and you'll see here, and we'll just go ahead and look at yesterday's example, if I can pull this up. So here are the top 10 teams, and I want to review that quickly as well. So the reason why I think playing the bottom 7 teams via my model, and again, I can only relate to what I'm doing, I can't relate to something somebody else is doing, is that I think that in the last 2 years, the changes we've had in Major League Baseball, last year was the first profitable year I've had. The 2 years prior to that was not profitable, so I had to make some changes. And I think what you've seen now is that's probably true with a lot of other handicappers as well. So the quote good teams are easily recognizable. So obviously, if you play those quote good teams, there's not a lot of value per se, and it makes it more difficult to turn a profit. So for example, yesterday was just a great example of that. So let's say if we play the top 10 teams via the model. And so the way I do this, we don't play if teams are playing each other. I think Houston and Angels were playing against each other. So we had, if we were going to do this, I didn't do this, but if we were, we'd have played Houston, Boston, San Diego, San Francisco, and Milwaukee. And the amount of profit you can see down there in the bottom right-hand corner was 0.77. So it was profitable, but not as profitable as playing the bottom 7, which I'll show you here. So when I say playing the bottom 7, these are the 7 teams at the bottom of my power ranking. So the strategy is we simply play against them. And this is a very important concept to learn. It's why I call it the play against concept, for you to learn. And you can apply this to other sports, meaning if you're creating a model, it's not necessarily, you're not necessarily playing for a team to win as much as you're playing against this team, meaning all of these teams here in the bottom of my power rankings, we know have a very small chance, or a less chance of winning than, say, teams at the top of the model. So therefore, if we play against these teams, we tend to get a little bit more value. And simply because some of these teams are playing against what we would call mid-tier teams, so we tend to get a lot more value. So you can look at yesterday, Cubs was playing Atlanta. Atlanta actually had that game won, lost it late, so that was minus 1.18 units. And of course, the big game there with Toronto, 1.71. They were playing against the White Sox. And let me slide over here and talk about this briefly. If you follow me on Instagram, it's still up there. The And this is a great example of what we talk about, a play against game. Look at the line for, this is my line, Chicago White Sox plus 150. The books had them at plus 171, and you could see Toronto was plus 165. So in essence, we're not necessarily saying the White Sox are a great team. We're basically playing this game on the fact that Toronto is extremely, extremely overvalued in this game. So if Toronto's way overvalued, then we have a ton of value with the White Sox, and that's what you saw. White Sox actually won that one 5-0 though. So that's a great example of the play against concept. And the White Sox were almost in the bottom 7; they were barely out. So, but again, going strictly by the model, that was a play. So anyway, so if you add all this up from yesterday, look down here at the bottom right, it did the same thing. It went 3-2, just like the top did, the top 10, but playing just the play against concept, it was up 1.99 units. Now, let's take a look at the back test. And we started doing this back on, which was last Monday, and just had some really solid results. Since 5/13, this has only had one losing day in the last 8 days, and currently 23-16, which is 59% up, plus 12.1 units. So again, the point I want to make is when you start a new season, or if you find something that's, quote, not working or not working as effectively as it has in the past, you can't be scared to change models or explore other options. Now, luckily for me, now I almost have like sort of a mini network, because I have a lot of former clients that I've trained to build models. And that's so ironic that I'm actually leaning on them to at times to give me advice. And so I greatly appreciate my former stat model client for helping me out with this as well. But again, the reason why I think the bottom 7, playing against those bottom 7 teams, is better. It's just more easy to find value in a classic. In that game with Toronto and Chicago White Sox, very difficult for the books to lay a really good line, because even though the White Sox, quote, aren't that good, they've only won like 15 games this season. But via my model, Toronto wasn't that good either. But the books, unfortunately, have to make one team the favorite and one team the dog. So in a play against concept, you're playing against the, quote, favorite. And we get a ton of value that way. And a lot of times you get really good dog money, like you saw in that example. So anyway, so let's now move on to power rankings for today. Okay, so you see here the top 10 teams. I'm not going to bore you with that, but we'll go ahead and look at the lines here. Just to kind of review that. St. Louis, we have them as the favorite, minus 173. Minnesota and Washington, they played several times. Neither one of those teams are, quote, good. They're both in the bottom 7. So the way I handicap that is I want to make sure that I have an advantage. So if two teams are playing each other in the bottom 7, it's simply a pass for me. Mets, Cleveland, we have Cleveland minus 118. I think that was Baltimore and St. Louis finish up at a game from yesterday. We have St. Louis minus 137. KC is a favorite over Detroit, minus 133. We have Angels, Houston, same concept there. Angels very undervalued. They lost last night, but they've cashed, I think, the previous 2 nights as dogs. So that's a quote classic 50-50 game. Again, not how I'm actually playing this year. And you have San Diego and Cincinnati. That's one of the games that we're going to play as well. You can see here, and again, really good example. San Diego is plus 135, so they're actually a dog via my line, but Cincinnati is plus 168. So we would actually, we're playing against the fact that Cincinnati's not that good. Texas, Philadelphia, we have both them as dogs. San Francisco minus 140, Pittsburgh plus 115. Milwaukee, Miami. Milwaukee's the favorite at minus 129, minus 129. My line, Boston, very undervalued right now, minus 125. We cashed them as dogs last night as well. I think they're dogs again today. Seattle Yankees, two really good teams. I think Seattle won that one last night as a basically what I call a 50-50 game. And then you're looking here, White Sox and Toronto. White Sox improved a little bit. Toronto was in the bottom 7 last night. They're not today, so we will pass on them. Atlanta, Chicago. Atlanta plus 110. Chicago would be a play against game. Colorado, Oakland. We would play against Oakland there. And then Arizona and Dodgers, we have that as a 50-50 game. So the actual games, if you're looking via the model, we have Cubs, Minnesota, Texas, Cincinnati, Oakland, Tampa, and Washington. So Minnesota and Washington are playing each other, so that would be a pass. So the actual games that we're going to play, we'll go ahead and look at the lines here for today. Let me get this pulled up. Slide down to, looks like the first one is going to be San Diego. Bookmaker has them at minus 123. And the way I'm playing this, and I had a client back test this is very fascinating. Good teaching point. If the line is minus 150 or less, we play it on the money line. If it's greater than that, we play it on the run line. And what we found is the run line cashes more when the money line is greater than minus 150. Very interesting, right? So again, so if the line is minus 120, minus 130, minus 140, we would play on the money line. If the money line is, say, minus 163, then we would play that team on the run line. So then therefore, going back to this, so San Diego is a play at minus 123. Boston would be a play at plus 115. Atlanta is a play at minus 134. Did I get Philadelphia? I forgot Philadelphia. Philadelphia would be a play as well at minus 121. And then finally, Colorado would be a play at plus 126. And again, this is what we call a bottom-up approach, which means we're not looking at line movement, no situational handicap. We rely 100% on the model, so we don't follow line movement. And more times than not, line movement will move against us. And that's the tricky part about following line movement with Major League Baseball. More times than not, the line moves in favor of the, quote, better pitcher. However, that's not always as accurate to use line movement simply because baseball is very complicated. Pitching is only 1/3 of the equation when you're handicapping baseball. You have relief pitching, you have hitting, which is a big part of baseball. So can't really use line movement, at least the way that I handicap. So we rely 100% on the model. So anyway, hope that helps and gives you some leans for today. If you want access to these, to my lines every single day, it's $50 a month. So very inexpensive. You also get access to all of our soccer power rankings, having a ton of success with that. And also, we just dropped our WNBA power rankings. We're going to test it here for a couple weeks and then maybe make some changes, but those are actually up for today. And if you want access to everything I just mentioned, in addition to all my plays, $100 a month, get access to everything on the website. If you join for an entire year, instead of paying $100 each month, you can pay $4.99 one time. You save about $600 on the paying every month. And it's basically like getting an associate's degree in sports handicapping. So you get access to all the lines, all my plays, all the coaching videos, $500 for an entire year. Hope this video helps. Like, subscribe to the channel. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.